Diksha, you are in Silicon Valley. I always bow down to you. You tell us, let's start off with what's the newest thing in Silicon Valley right now?
I think there's this startup called Perplexity. Perplexity, perplexity.ai. It is surprisingly good. It is started by an Indian guy called Arvind. It just got funded around $75 million by Jeff Bezos and his team. And it is surprisingly good. For example, let's see what this is a new search engine. They're trying to compete with Google. Let's ask it what it knows about Sourav Mukherjee, okay? So I'm going to share my screen.
Are we trying Perplexity?
Yes, I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to ask Perplexity what it knows about our guest today. So I'm going to go to...
Are you able to zoom into some parts of the screen?
Let me make my window smaller. Is that better?
Yeah.
Yes.
Can see it.
So, here's what the AI is telling us about our guest on the show today. We call him Sourav Da because Da is a favorite term for us Bengalis. There are two Bengalis on the show here today. So he's a prominent figure at IIM Bangalore. Teaches postgraduate and doctoral level courses. Received several awards, various leadership positions. His expertise is in organizational design. And he has worked at IBM and Oracle. It's not mentioning BCG, which we'll have to give it some feedback that you should have mentioned that Sourav Da has also worked at BCG. He's the chairperson of Decision Science and IIMB Chair of Excellence. Also BTech from IIT Kharagpur.
Chairperson
That's
of
a mistake.
Decision Science is a mistake.
Okay.
जिसको बोलते हैं ना मतलब it is artificial intelligence. Firstly, there is artificial, and then secondly, there's also intelligence.
And
rest of the stuff it has got right.
Yeah. It did not mention that you are the alumni chairperson. So I think that's something critical that it missed.
A lot of stuff which it has missed out also, but at least whatever it has, there's one mistake. Otherwise, it's nice.
Yes. Let's ask
So
us
how is it better than Google or ChatGPT or whatever else?
Sure. So this is doing something very interesting. What it is doing is it is using an LLM, asking the LLM, tell me where can I find information about Sourav Mukherjee, and the LLM told it that you can find information about Sourav Mukherjee on these 4-5 places. And once it gets these sources, then it is summarizing them for us. So the goal of Perplexity is that anything that it gives you will be cited. So it got chairperson of Decision Sciences wrong. I'll talk to Arvind today and I'll ask him what happened here. But it should have gotten it right because it's saying it is getting this information from these sources. So one of the sources is telling it something wrong, or maybe there's a bug in the code. But
so that's either the IIMB site or LinkedIn or something like that.
Yes. So what they're saying is that when you go to ChatGPT and when you search for something, the response that you get is not cited, but here the responses that you get are cited. So that's the key difference. I'm really surprised with the speed of it. I like Perplexity.ai, and I think this is the buzz in the town, at least this week. So, and I think
I'm probably about to put my own head in the guillotine, but I'm curious. मेरे बारे में क्या कहता है ये?
Okay, let's do that. What do you know about First of all, it thinks you're 20 years
यार
younger,
सही
Megs.
फोटो मारी है यार बचपन वाली. Actually, you know what? I need to add perspective. some लोग बोलते हैं कि बचपन वाली है. It's not that old. It's just 4 or 5 years old.
That's it.
Which is a bit old, I know. But more than that, it's just the hair on the face.
Yeah.
And I think it got a lot of it right, that you hold an MBA from London Business School, Masters in Management from IIM. It does get this wrong because IIMs, they don't give out my master's degree. At least they did not used to. They used to give out PGPs.
Master. It's not saying degree. बिल्कुल नहीं बोला degree.
I said Masters in Management. It didn't say PGP.
Master तो हमेशा से देते थे.
You know, because the classification by Financial Times for IIMB's PGP is Masters in Management. So that way it is correct.
Okay. Nice.
So I'll tell you this. Based on my profile, and I'm being a devil's advocate here, I think it's just putting in phrases my LinkedIn profile.
Sure.
That's the
but think
cited
about
part
this.
that Vic was talking about, right? That it's summarizing from the cited sources.
Yeah. उसके बीच में थोड़े से verbs और adjectives डाल दिए हैं.
तो उसको interpret
So what's the
करके
value add? Value add क्या है? Where's the AI? Where's the big
Okay,
thing
let's
that?
ask,
Where's the moat?
What is the value? What is the value add by Perplexity? Perplexity over LLM like Lamati. So at least the I'm a relatively new user to Perplexity, but what it is, at least what the media is saying, is that the value add is that it gives you back citations in its responses, and I can actually open chat.openai and we can do a search on chat.openai, ask it about Sourav Mukherjee and Manish Miglani, and we'll see what it says. Hold on, give me 1 second. Let me do that.
Vix, just click on the rewrite. What will it rewrite?
Okay.
The cell?
Rewrite, okay.
Yeah, next to share.
Okay, so it's telling us, so it tells us, it asks us like which of the models that you want to use in the background. We can use GPT-4, Claude, experimental. So this is our second episode, your first guest, and thank you for accepting our invitation. You are known as the youngest guy of our batch. You look 10 years younger than everyone else. So what's the secret? How many hours do you put in the gym or exercising every day?
No, I think the easy answer is I chose my parents carefully. So that's why I look close. But I do put some effort in keeping myself fit. So it's not like gym too much, but I'm an amateur runner. Spend about 4 days of the week I run, 2 days to the gym, and a little bit care in terms of sleeping on time, which is going to be not possible today, and a bit careful about the food. So all of these put together, and some wonderful luck about my looks.
And what's your timing for the 10,000K that you run usually? That's your usual
10
run,
kilometers?
correct?
Okay, you're saying for 10
10K.
kilometers, 10K is
10K.
usually around maybe 55 minutes, 54 minutes, something.
Yeah.
Less
Under
than
1
that.
hour. So
Good. Good. If you're
10
driving in
kilometers
London, you can't go at that speed in London driving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In Bangalore, on Most Road.
So somebody said that so long it is under your age in terms of timing, it is good. So I just turned 53 in November, so I can run a 10K with my best efforts under 53 minutes. So
Wow,
should be
that's 6 miles. So you are literally running each mile in around 8 minutes.
yeah, I don't do the mile thing, but it is faster than 10 kilometers per hour.
Yeah, very impressive. Very impressive. Do we have any other runner in our batch? I think there are quite a lot of runners in Bangalore, right?
Lots of.
Vishal
I
is
love
there.
runners. I love runners. I have invested in hip and knee transplant and replacement companies. I love runners.
Yeah,
Yeah,
lots
the
of
investor
them.
guy is
Yeah,
always looking out for his investments, huh?
some points of time. I
More
think
more
IB was
customers
running.
getting creative.
Vishal to definitely.
Yeah, you sponsor marathons, sponsor 10K runs, and tell them where to come after that.
Is there a science between running and losing your knee cartilage, Migs?
Actually, there is. It's not directly related to running. It's related to impact and the
Okay.
amount of impact. So there are two things that, whether it's knee or hip or whatever, it's general health. There are two things that create problems for your joints. Or main joints are knee and hip, and one is inactivity, and the other is excessive activity. So, running, which in my vocabulary is non-human excessive activity, is the excessive activity part. Of course, inactivity is the biggest market segment.
Okay.
It is historically the biggest market segment. People who are inactive, they have the most problems with their joints, and they have historically been the biggest reasons for hip and knee replacements.
So, sort of, we'll talk
Migs,
about your.
we should read the book called Born to Run,
Yeah,
because there
I
is
have.
a lot of interesting research which says that human beings survived because they could run. If we were unable to run, we would not have been living in this planet today. Right? We are not the fastest, we are not the strongest, but we survived because we are endurance runners. So we could outrun most animals. And verify this one, I'm not very sure that we are probably the only animal or a handful of few who sweat. And as a consequence, our metabolism and the sweat level is such that we don't allow that temperature to reach a very critical point, which often happen with other animals if they run very fast. So they will just
Correct.
hit
So
that
most hunters, they have to stop because they have just suddenly consumed all the energy.
Yeah. So, well, biology at some level can be.
I think that extreme case on the consuming all energy is like a lion or one of those big cat kind of
Correct.
hunters.
No, actually,
Right.
deers very often
Huge
do that.
energy, but only for a short burst.
Very short.
Even deer, when you chase a deer, apparently they can run very fast, but then they will drop dead because they will hit the temperature.
Yeah. And if the deer can escape for like 1 second extra, they're saved.
No, but this
How's
isn't on the humans being able to survive because of running. I think the flight or fight response that we typically talk about. If that flight was not there, we would have really not survived in the jungle.
Yeah.
I remember IIM Bangalore, 1998 to 2000. Even at that time, I don't think outside the campus, the Banagatta road was not suitable for running. So
Not
do you
at-
usually run on campus, or
Yeah.
have they improved outside the campus, the
No,
facilities?
not at all. I mean, Bangalore roads are anyway not suitable for running because of heavy traffic. So I run on campus, and we have certain other places where we go. We often drive to the city outskirts for finding open spaces, but even now we have to drive longer with the city itself expanding. There are
Sure.
of course Lalbagh and Cubbon Park, if you remember, which are the big spaces within the city. Thankfully, they have kept those still suitable for walking, running, etc. But there's too much of crowding there. I mean, sometimes even we clash with walkers. Not all of who are very happy about people running around. So it's a bit of a challenge. Actually, I am very lucky that I can at any point of day or night run on campus.
Nice.
So if I got that right, that big assumption, you're still on campus, right?
Yeah, many of the apartment complexes also make sure that they have a 1 kilometer running track. So nowadays it has become
Okay.
inbuilt into all apartment complexes.
And see, I've also not been on campus for at least 15 or 18 years. So that entire football field, cricket field, that everything is not there anymore, from what I hear. Is that right?
No, football field is there. In fact, it has kind of expanded because if you remember when we were there, then one part of it was taken by the tennis court. Now, because we have a sports complex, the tennis court has completely moved to the sports complex. So you have the whole field as a football field, which also doubles up as a cricket field. It is a lot more greener than what it was during our time. But it is now covered all around by hostels. So behind the cricket field, it used to be woods when you were here.
Yes.
But now you have not high rise, about 3 stories hostel behind it.
So what I remember is after D block and toward the flats on the other side, if you just run to the flats on the other side and then come back, that was a 10K run. Or maybe I'm exaggerating, but you know what I mean.
No, it won't be 10K really
Yeah, it
because
won't
we
be
are not
10K.
that big.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Maybe
not
going around the field once or twice, that would give you all the fresh air.
Yeah,
But all that's covered with new blocks, right?
buildings. Yeah.
So how many students now?
At a point of time, we have 1,300 students on campus now.
Wow. I remember we had like a batch of 180, so 2 years means 360, and then a few FPMs, a few here and there.
That's
Then
it.
400-ish at our time, 25 years ago.
Yes. Yeah.
So now it is 600 per batch
Wow.
and another 100 PhD students and another 75 coming from the EPGP, which is the full-time 1-year executive MBA.
Wow. And 100 PhD students. That's a large number. I was
Yes.
not expecting that.
Yeah, which is one of the, if not the largest PhD program in the country for management students.
And these PhDs, they usually take around 4 to 6 years to graduate.
Yes, so the scholarship is now for 4 years, which was the same for
Okay.
during our time also.
Correct.
But there were, in our time, it was a bit slack in terms of allowing people to take more time. Nowadays, the program has tightened, so we are kind of try to make that, you better be out of the place by 4.5, max 5.
Okay. Sort of one of the things that has always I've been always curious about is that from campus you went to work for BCG, right, as a consultant, if I get that correct, and then
Yes.
you came back and then you did your PhD at IIM Bangalore, correct?
No, I had signed up for the PhD program anyway, right? So when I was with you
Okay.
in the class, it was a FPM. So
Oh,
I
yes.
Yeah,
completed
he
the
was PhD
PhD
student
and
only.
then went to do my
Okay.
PhD study.
Okay, so you finished your PhD say in 2003 and then you went to work for BCG.
2002 actually. Yeah, 2002.
2002. And then you went to work for BCG.
Yes.
And what brought you back to academics?
Okay. So I did my PhD to become a professor.
Okay.
That was the thing. Because I had already worked for 5 years in the industry. I did not want to be in the industry for long. And since I wanted to be a professor, I chose to do the FPM program. I had the option of doing an MBA at that point also, but I chose the FPM. But what happened was that IIMB does not immediately recruit its PhD students, and because of my wife's career, neither Ahmedabad nor Calcutta was suitable for me. So I had to go out before I could come back, and hence BCG turned out to be a good parking space. Even in the interview, I told them that this is my career objective, that I will be here till the time IIMB is ready to do an interview for me as a faculty member. And they were perfectly comfortable with it. In fact, I remember Valentin von Massow, who was the India head of BCG at that point of time, said that nobody should think of building an entire career in consulting when they're joining the group. You should always take 2 years at a time and then decide whether you want to do the next 2 years. So it's perfectly fine with us. And as you know, that all of these consulting companies thrive on having alumni network. So they are very
Yes.
happy to have alumni in all kinds of places.
Okay. Okay. That's a new information. Like I did not know a lot of it. I did not know that you came to the campus with the idea of becoming a professor, and BCG was just a parking place.
Yes, it was. Yeah.
Uh, okay. Okay. What are
But
the biggest differences?
just one question, just following up on what you mentioned. You talked about the fact that people should look at 2 years at a time, especially in a consulting environment. Is this something which you believe other consulting firms also kind of guide us, or kind of an unwritten guidance?
See, I don't think I don't know whether they explicitly tell it, but I think it was one of the best advice I have heard about, right? Because
Mhm.
as you know that in consulting, especially in what they now on campus called MBB, which is McKinsey BCG there,
Mhm.
there is every 2 years you have a harder review, and either you cross it or you don't, right? So they said that okay, every 2 years you have to take a call. Now, obviously, if you are moving out because of because company asking you to, then you don't have a choice. But they say that even if you get promoted, that's the best time to leave the company if you want, right? So
Because
and
this is
there
a very
the role
interesting
also changes every 2 years quite dramatically, right? So hence that's a good time to review and take a call whether you will continue with the next 2 years or will you kind of actually move out. So I think it's a pretty sound advice.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a sound advice. And why I'm asking this is because a lot of people who join institutes like IIMB, they want to look at consulting as a career.
Hmm.
And an insight like this would be very good for them to have.
I
That,
tell them all the
yes,
while whenever whoever is willing to listen to me, I tell them all the while that yeah,
no,
you should
definitely.
always look at 2 years at a time, not more.
That's exactly what I keep telling my son, who's 11 years. Um, Listen to me, he doesn't. But then I look back at myself. I never listened to my dad. So
Yeah.
if you listen to your elders, now that I know, if you listen to your elders, you'll do wonders.
So I have another interesting question for you. When you teach PGP students in the batch, what is your perspective? Do you think people who come to IIMs, whether it be PGPs or FPMs or PhD students or EPGP, do you think there's a qualitative difference on an average? Or do you think if you went to, say, XLRI Jamshedpur or one of these non-IIMs, or maybe one of the newer IIMs, is it just a luck factor on how people do on that day of the exam? Or is there a qualitative difference in the group of people that you teach on an average? We're not talking about exceptions.
Hmm. No, because I would say that if I take a slice of ABC, that would be a cluster. I'm not so sure about L, where it just falls, because it may also belong to the ABC cluster. But compared that to any other cluster, you would see a difference.
Okay.
You would see a difference. And why am I telling you this is because I interview close to 200 students every year.
Okay.
And I know that we are able to reasonably make a difference between those who are coming in and those who are not coming in.
Through the interview process.
Yes. Right. So,
Okay.
although a CAT score may not differentiate so much, because you might argue that, well, what's the difference between a 99.7 percentile and a 99 percentile? That's hardly
Yes.
anything. But compared to your time when you went to IIMB, only CAT was the determinant for you to get in.
Okay.
Right? CAT was make or break. Either you cracked it or you don't. Whereas today,
Okay.
CAT is only about 22-23% of the total weight.
Wow. Okay.
Significant amount of weight is now put on your past academic performance. So I
Okay.
think people who are coming here and IIMB, and this is something which even A and C are also following, they have a much stronger, consistent academic performance. So
Okay.
in the class,
So what is past academic, then CAT, what else?
then
Interview,
interview actually has a huge weight now.
and you also have essays and things like that.
We have a test of written English, kind of equivalent. Yeah, that's it. Group discussions are no longer there now.
Okay.
Okay.
The written, I mean, proficiency in writing is something that is still there.
And compared to the number of people so to get a batch of 600 people, do you end up interviewing 1200 people? Is the ratio 2:1 or 3:1?
Yeah, so for a general category, it is more than 3:1. It can be a 4:1 kind of thing.
Wow.
Whereas for reserved categories, it's a little less the ratio, because we don't. So what happens is there are two things, right? There is also a lower cutoff below which we don't want to go. So if you are looking in that range, then we sometimes don't get enough candidates within it for reserved categories. But for general category, it's definitely between 3 and 4 times.
That's very impressive, because even in I don't think Stanford and Harvard, they have a 4:1 cutoff when it comes to the interview phase. So that's a lot of filtering happening at that level.
It's a very different scale, right? I mean, this year more than 300,000 people applied for CAT, and on the day of exam, there were 2.9 lakh people who wrote the exam. And we will be selecting 600 out of them. So in terms of selectivity, we are definitely much tougher than any of the other business schools in the world.
Wow. So let me ask you another curious question that comes to my mind. My understanding of reservation is very what the media feeds me, right? Like, I understand about reservation what the media feeds me. I don't have a nuanced understanding that I expect you to have now that you've been on campus for almost 20 years teaching these students. What I know from media is that it's a very divisive topic, and what my logic tells me is that it should just be economic reservation. I can understand a poor person not having same resources as others to get into a premier institute like IIM Bangalore, but I don't understand caste-based reservation, because at least the media tells me, well, IAS ka beta IIM pahunchta hai, because, well, I'm reserved. What's your nuanced understanding about this?
Okay, so I will give you two views. One is the view which is coming through very reasonably rigorous academic research, and that does show that reservation is making a lot of difference.
Okay.
Now, right, and in any of these processes, you will have type 1 and type 2 error. So definitely we can talk of cases where reserved are not getting in and some undeserved candidates are getting in. But if you look at long-term, large number research, then it says that it is certainly making a lot of difference.
Okay.
Anecdotally, I actually see on campus that there are students who really are coming from very, very challenged background.
Okay.
And the argument that you made about economic condition, actually there is very significant overlap between what you are talking and the lower caste. So a significant part of the economically weaker sections statistically are from the lower caste. So you can't separate those two out. Though obviously we will have poor people from the upper caste and the rich people from the lower. So those are margins. I mean, I think the bulk of it. So so I sit for also interviewing students who are eligible for scholarships because they come from economic challenge background. And if you look at those applications, they are from really, really poor background, right? I mean, kind of poverty which I'm sure you and I have not even have familiarity with. And a majority of them are also from backward castes, because as you will notice that in India, looking at the surname itself, you and I can make a reasonable guess about the caste, right? So that overlap is significantly there. At the same time, what you talked about is also true. That what happens is, because it is English, we are interviewing in English and stuff like that. I interview candidates who have studied in, say, places like Delhi Public School, and they're coming into our caste, I mean, from a reservation category, because they're third or second generation beneficiaries. So mistake is also there, and as a result, a lot of, or at least some number of students will be unhappy that, oh, come on, I mean, these people have come on reservation, but they seem to be not even disadvantaged. They're actually more advantaged than what many of them are. But if you look at the studies, etc., then I think those are more exceptions.
Okay. And so, can you explain for our audience what's a type 1 error in case of reservation? And what would be a type 2 error in case of reservation?
Well, in the sense, you will always end up providing the concession to an undeserving candidate. That
Okay,
is
that's a type 1 error.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the other way around will be that you will not provide the concession to a deserving candidate. That's the type.
Okay.
So in any kind of
Okay.
selection process, you will have these two commit these two mistakes, and unfortunately, you can't minimize both at the same time.
Okay. So there was this third question. So we talked about, are the people who are coming to A, B, and C as a cohort, are they qualitatively different? And thank you for telling me that the ratio is almost 4:1. So that makes it very clear that, well, the quality will be different. And the second question was the reservation. You're saying that research shows that it helps. Can you share some of the research with us? Because what we hear in media is never research oriented. So could you share some of that research?
No, I think there are people who are doing good work from, I may not be able to reel off the names, but, from Tata Institute of Social Sciences and places like that, who have been doing caste studies and gender studies for a while. And it wouldn't be too difficult to find, seeing that Economic and Political Weekly. I mean, if you look at those kind of, I can't see EPW is a journal, but it's kind of somewhere in mix. You will find reasonable evidence to say that it is making a lot of difference.
Okay. And when people graduate after spending 2 years at IIM, do you see a difference in placements, in how the general category is getting placed and how the reserved category is getting placed?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
Part of the reason is also that it is also very difficult to take this call, because except for the admission committee or admission office, nobody gets to know the caste of anybody on campus. Though in India, of course, looking at the surnames, you can make some call.
Yes.
You can say that, okay,
yes,
Mukherjee is a Brahmin, X is not.
Yes.
But none of the employers get to know about it, and I think there may be, let me tell you this, that if you do a correlation between students who are probably struggling in the course versus people who are doing reasonably okay, you may find, I haven't looked at this data, but anecdotally, you may find a little bit more incidence of people who are coming from the reserved category. But I think that is understandable, because
that's understandable. Yes,
our cutoffs are also lower, and many of these people also have not done their studies in English as a vernacular, as a first language. And so naturally they have also a lot, and that's where I see the difference, that it's not about intelligence, it's not about innate capability to give the logic, but it's maybe about communication. It's maybe about a bit of confidence that many of them lack with one-on-one situation. So from that perspective, you might just see a difference in placement, but I don't think beyond that it carries any weight. And thankfully, our academic institutes are able to create that kind of confidence in them that eventually they are able to overcome that.
That's very nice.
And I think that's where the benefit of gap courses or pre-courses comes in for every candidate, especially for those who are on a lower cutoff.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think a lot of guidance also during the admission process. Also, when candidates are selected, they are recommended for such programs. Right?
Yeah. I mean, some of my highest points in admission interviews have been, I will tell you one where there was this girl from Uttar Pradesh who could not speak English very well, but she took us through the mechanics of a brick business, because her father was a bricklayer and her ambition in life was to improve the economic condition of the family. And we said, how will you do that? He said, okay, I will become the owner of the brick business. My father is a laborer there. I will become the owner. I said, okay, can you explain the mechanics of brick business? And she just took us through each and everything. Many of our students won't be able to do that. And I think that's the highest point. He said, okay, let's get her in. I mean, this is the person whom we need in class.
Yeah.
So those are great moments.
Get her in. She will get into McKinsey and tell all the brick businesses how to improve.
Yeah. I mean, I had this experience of, when students first come in, our day one on PGP orientation, I see these parents they're sitting on the the pavement of our institute. And I said, I mean, what about it? Why are you here? He said, no, my son has got admission in an institute. I don't have the money to stay in a hotel. He came in a bus that night.
Wow.
And I don't have any place to stay.
That's giving me goosebumps out of that. Thank you for sharing
When
this.
I tell you this, I am feeling emotional about it. Every time I talk about it. They were sitting on the pavements and you could look at them and they're extremely poor. And I felt glad that, we have a system which enables us to get those candidates, right? Because I know that it will be a life-changing experience for that student. And hopefully...
Not only the student, but an extended family.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And just for context, what's the annual fee or the 2-year fee at this time for the IIM?
25 lakhs for IIM Bangalore.
Oh my God. I remember it was 2 lakhs in our time, or under 2 lakhs in our time, and that wasn't a small amount.
It wasn't,
It wasn't a small amount for those times.
Economics have gone up. I mean, the prices have gone up. It has become much more pegged to the market. The only justification that we provide, because we are still a government institute, so we are liable to explain why we are charging so much. And what we try to peg is the annual median salary of the batch. And the annual median salary is higher than 25 lakhs. Right? So, in fact, just yesterday, Rishi was making a presentation to the board and he was showing that how we have been able to maintain that always, saying that our 2-year fee will be less than the annual median salary, right?
Interesting.
Which is one way of looking at it, right? I mean, obviously.
So I'm going to challenge you on that. So, and just as 2 separate comparison points, in our batch, I think the annual salary, median salary when we were placed was about 5 or 6 lakhs.
Okay.
And our fees, which was of course 2 years previous to when that salary happened, was about 1.7 lakhs, if I remember right, or 1.8 lakhs, something in that region. So it was about 4 times that or 3 times that.
Yeah, much lesser. Yeah, much lesser. No,
so in terms of that percentage, do you think that value add, it's called value add sometimes?
Yeah, still there is a gap. That's all I'm saying. Not see, because
so that gap is actually going the wrong way. Is that right? The fees are increasing faster than the median salaries are increasing.
If you draw it back to anything beyond 2010, then that is how the data will look. But the quantum jump in fees happened 5 times around 2010, and from then onwards, it has remained more or less the same. The gap.
Okay, so that was the 2010 correction, the post Lehman, which affected India about 2 years later.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. No, makes sense. So that correction, and of course, and so the fees are still way lower than what the average salary, but then it is a bit like Betfair or Satta or Jua. Is like, should I pay this fee? As a parent, if I can't afford really, and let's say my kid gets in, I'm like, and the kid says, Dad, I'll get 25 lakhs, and I'm like, I'll have to borrow to pay that.
As Saravda said, if you can't afford them, there are programs to help support that. So,
but that program to help support will still be like taking a bet on, because you have to repay. And I'm not talking about grants or those kind of programs. I'm talking about like the repayment programs.
So most students on campus are today pretty highly leveraged. So they take loans to the order of about 32-33 lakhs, which covers their fees, their stay, as well as an international, program. So the exchange program. And I get surprised, right? And I think this is a little bit of a difference probably between if I was a student versus the current student. They are saying, come on, I mean, if I take 30 lakhs loan, what's the big deal of not taking 32 lakhs? But at least that will give me a nice trip to, nice experience to go to some university in France or Germany and have that experience, right? So you are right. They are, most of them are very highly leveraged. And this is a problem which is there in US also, right? I mean, they are also talking about the same stuff.
Students end up, that's a major problem.
That model I'm not very sure. I mean, that's doing a lot of stuff, because see now the challenge what has become is that this is one of the reason why the salary becomes very important on campus, right? I mean, I don't remember these kind of discussions, at least during our time. I was, of course, a little bit away from the mainstream discussions which you guys would have, because you guys got the MBAs, I was looking at a PhD program, but I don't think there was so much of bloodbath on campus for marks and grades, and thinking that if I can get a little bit more grade, then I will make it to the shortlist, and that shortlist means I will get a lot more salary, right? People are clearly seeing that line now, whereas in our time I don't think it was so sharp. So the incentive system has become much sharper, and as a result, to some extent, that is taking away focus from learning towards saying, okay, how can I maximize as much of salary possible in my first job?
Yeah. I think a part of that is probably explained by leverage, not fully, but some part of that is what they are getting in. And to be honest, I've also been on the other side, where I've paid heavily for another MBA after the IIM. And from that experience, I have to tell you, if like you were saying, for the US, for UK, what you pay for the MBA for 2 years, purely academic fees, that's pretty much the top level salary you'll get in the first year post MBA. So it's like a 1-to-1 leverage, or actually 1-to-half, because you'll get that in 1 year. And then for Indian students like us who come to the UK and also for the US, it's also cost of living difference. So that also adds a lot more than what we assume in India, because when you are talking about fees, you're talking about fees which is including boarding and lodging. When an LBS or a Harvard is talking about fees, they are talking about purely academic fees, and then everything else is you do it.
Yeah. Incidentally, just to give you some sense, our 1 year full-time program is around 34-35 lakhs. That's for 1 year. And ISB is at 44 lakhs.
Okay. What about ANC? ANC
would be the very similar to us. We always look at each other and pick the stuff.
Okay.
Competitive.
So for a lot of,
have you started seeing any preferences among students choosing a 1 year program versus the 2 year program?
No.
Is the 2 year program?
India still the first choice is the 2 year program. 1 year program is, if you have whatever might be the reason missed out on that bandwagon, then after 4 or 5 years you come back and do the 1 year program.
Okay.
Earlier that option wasn't there at all. Now you have at least 4 or 5 good quality 1 year programs also coming. So the 3 IIMs, ABC and ISB.
Yes.
Can people still prepare for their GAT exams and the interviews, or do you think your advice would be just do good in life, and like all these, coaching is a big business in India, right? Do you think coaching makes a difference?
Okay, so here is my take. I mean, if you are driven yourself and disciplined, then I don't think you need the coaching. But so for the content of it, you don't need the coaching. But if being part of the group makes you more disciplined, more rigorous, then coaching helps. Certainly for writing the exam. Now, for the interviews, I have seen disasters because they become too coached, they come and tell you the same stuff, and they don't even apply the mind, right? So which is good for us, right? Because you are saying, okay, I'm not going to select candidate who comes and parrots whatever the coaching classes have told. Whereas the smarter ones will not do that. The smarter ones will probably attend some of the coaching interviews, but then still have their own individuality to come and. But so I will look at coaching more from a developing the discipline, being very regular perspective, not anything more than that.
Okay. And I know that one of the big projects that IIM Bangalore is doing is actually creating a world-class campus with over an investment of 1,000 crores. You've been working with Rishi on that project quite a lot. Could you talk a bit more about that?
Yes. So there has always been an expectation of the government, because we are still a government institution, to expand our scale. But we internally we know that there are serious trade-offs involved. I mean, if you increase, say, from a current size of 600 to what they would expect, say 1500, 2000, then there is going to be a lot of other challenges. There is also this thing, and that has been now made much more clear in the new education policy, that they are encouraging institutes like us and to IITs to become much more broad-based. They say don't stay only focused on one particular discipline, and you will see most of the IITs have already done that quite well. I mean, many of them have management schools, law schools, medical schools, and stuff like that. So it was brewing in our mind for a while that how can we broad base ourselves, what are some of the areas where we can go, rather than just scaling the MBA program, because we still think that the MBA program probably we have already hit a ceiling in terms of the size what we have. And so we chose to do undergraduate. We did a market survey and we found out that there are not many high quality program in general streams in India in the undergraduate level. You have good quality programs in medical, engineering, and today in law. But when it comes to, say, sciences or humanities, then there are very few. Somebody like an Ashoka, which has been doing very well in the last few years, we need much more number of them. A lot of people had asked us that why don't you do a BBA, but we strongly believe that we should do something more fundamental. And since we are doing anyway MBA, there is no point in doing a BBA. The grounding should be on more things like economics, psychology, and stuff. So we decided that we will do this School of Multidisciplinary Studies with 4 specialization as of now: economics, psychology, sustainability, and data sciences. So we are trying to be traditional in the eco and psychology space and becoming more contemporary in the environmentals, the sustainability, as well as the data sciences. So that's the plan. Intake should be about 600 students per year as we ramp up. The state government has given us a land which is 25 kilometers from our current campus. So we have already constructed enough for the first year. But for the rest of the construction, we need a lot of money. We are just about starting to go and raise capital because we don't get any funds from the government, and our internal accruals will give us some money from that, but it is far lower than what we would want. Moreover, our internal accruals are also necessary for investing on the present campus. So that's what we are at this stage. We are very upbeat about the school, undergraduate school. We are hopeful that it should operate from 2025, which means that in 2024 we should start constructing for the second year administrative block, hostel block, and classrooms. So that's where we are, and we are trying to raise funds from primarily 3 sources. One is foundations, the second is CSR grants from companies, because we qualify under the education segment of CSR, and the third is from people like you, Alumni. So these are the 3 things that we have in mind, and this is, I would say, the most entrepreneurial venture in the life of IIM Bangalore. First 50 years we have been reasonably focused on MBA. Hopefully in the next 10 to 12 years we will be able to establish something in the undergraduate space.
And with this, is A and C for fast followers behind you, or they're not even trying to compete with you on this?
As of now, we have not heard. As of now, I don't think it is there in their horizon. Maybe they will wait and see. But you know that some of the IIMs have started the undergraduate program in BBA. So like IIM
Indore runs the BBA program.
Indore has an integrated BBA MBA program, and I think 1 or 2 other IIMs are also taking that route. But we consciously avoided that.
Yeah, I want to share my experience of studying at Shriram College of Commerce, which, like you know, is the premier undergraduate, like after class 12, non-medical law or engineering. And I'll tell you my experience. I studied for 1 month each year. So for 3 years, I studied for 3 months, 1 month before the exam. And the other 11 months was totally in the hostel rooms, doing everything else other than studies. So, and now when I see...
You studied for 2.5 months more than me in my 3-year graduation.
Yeah. but now when I see my friends in America doing the undergraduate, they are on a 3-month quarterly system. Every 3 months there's an exam. Every uh, couple of weeks they're making a presentation in their classroom. They're doing some projects. So I think the learning is much more well-rounded than what I got. So I feel like a quarter or a semester-based system with much more project orientation.
I think I think Vic, if I might, is see whether it's semester or quarterly or monthly, all those testing systems, frequent testing systems, always get people to study more frequently, as
Yes.
the name says, right? But that intensity of studying, and I'm guessing it's the same for you, but in that 3 weeks before the exams that I studied, that intensity was way
Yeah.
more than any of these young kids can imagine. And they don't even have that capacity to study like 4 days in a row without sleeping with purely caffeine and without the blue pills.
Yeah. Yeah. You're right. Uh, so, Saurabh, I saw your page on IIM Bangalore, and I saw that you published a lot in the first 10 years of your career. Can you talk a little bit about what are your research areas of interest, and uh, what kind of research are you interested in?
Right. So, I must tell you this, that when I joined as a faculty member, we were at a stage where the institute never defined any targets for publication. So the institute
Okay.
kind of told me that make yourself useful, right? So
Okay.
whatever you do, push the boundary, make yourself useful. And because our economics of each of the institutes are very different from, say, typically American top quality institute where they have huge endowments, we don't have that. So we earn our salaries by teaching, right? So
Okay.
I kind of got down very heavily into both teaching, executive education, and along with that, very applied research. Now, when you do that, then it is not the same as, say, for example, productivity of a young faculty who joins an American university, because there
Okay.
you are very clearly given targets, saying if you don't hit, say, 3 A category journals, then you are actually out of the system. Whereas
Okay.
we never had
Okay.
that kind of stuff. Right? We had a very
Okay.
much more homely discussion with the director and the dean, saying, what are you up to? Are you pushing the boundaries? So on and so on. Now, so at that point of time, I was very interested in looking at Indian companies going into global markets, because those are the days where, apart from our software service companies, we were talking of companies like Ranbaxy and Dr. Reddy's lab going into international markets. Company like a Bharat Forge, who is saying that even in core manufacturing, I can go and take on the best in the world, etc. So I think the first 7 or 8 years of my academic career, while I was very much focused on teaching, I was also getting into administration. I was doing research on these kind of companies, and the little bit of publication that you see were coming from that. But then I got, I would say, a little bit disillusioned by this for-profit commercial world. To some extent, I thought that well, there are a lot of others also who are doing that work, so I am not really getting a lot of kick out of that. And coincidentally, that was also the period where I got very closely associated with some of the social enterprises. I got exposure to the general inequality that exists in the Indian economy. So that was about 20 odd years post liberalization, and you find that while India was having very good growth, good GDP, etc., but inequality was very strong. I mean, it was just not reducing, and hence I started looking at this entire space of social enterprises. How do you create inclusive business models? And I thought that while the traditional way of looking at poverty and inequality was through the NGO lens, can we create business models where for-profit companies can address the needs of the poor? And that's where the social business model was coming in. That was also the time when Muhammad Yunus got the Nobel Prize, when C.K. Prahlad was talking about bottom of the pyramid. So when all of these I looked at, I got very inspired, and best way of I thought teaching myself about the sector would be to force myself to offer a course. So I started running this course from 2009 on inclusive business models. At that point of time, Professor Geeta Sen, who was, as you might remember, she was a very
I
well-known
fondly
economist.
remember.
Yeah, so she also was my co-teacher because I knew that the economics part of it I was not so strong for the development economics part. So I asked madam to come and help me out. And from then onwards, I started investigating, researching on many of these companies, and started writing about them, publishing case studies on them, many of which have been published by Harvard Business. And then that course is still running. Initially I was thinking that will even PGP students care about taking this as an elective, but thankfully I have a lot of good response from them. In fact, this year I ran 2 sections of it, like 150
Oh,
students.
wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
so that was quite a handful. So yes, that has been largely the focus of my research work. I have also got very much interested on issues of sustainability during the last few years. My aim has been to now float a course on sustainability, once again looking at the business aspect of it much more closely, saying how can we balance the sustainability dimension with the strategic imperatives of companies to remain profitable, etc. But I think I'm probably a couple of years away from being able to float the course because I'm still developing case studies, looking for leads. And while there are reasonable amount of cases available at a global scale, there aren't many, or I would say there is handful as far as India is concerned. And all of these issues, you will notice either inclusivity or sustainability are very strong local dimensions. I mean, there is limitations to how much you can teach by talking about a company in Africa or in London, right? So unless we develop local content, we don't get the power. So that has been my journey so academically. I also published a book.
Very interesting. That sustainability part, when you mention local aspect of sustainability, and I see it all around me, and being in that sustainability field for the last 8 or 9 years now, I think that's the big thing that most people miss. Or maybe, let me put it the other way. I won't say that people miss. It's that because it is all politically led, everything is local because the votes are local. No one cares about votes in a different country and where the stuff is happening in a different country. But I didn't want to ask you a question on sustainability, but rather going back on what you were saying about equality and equity and what initially you were working on at IIM Bangalore. Do you see a difference in the last 15 years or 10 years in both in terms of people's acceptability of those themes as well as the course attendance and in the MBA students and other batches that are taking up or want to attend those classes?
When you say your first part of the question was acceptability of people, who are these people? Whom do you have in mind?
The students and the faculty. Students. So I was just like casting a wide net.
No, I think
everyone, and then my second one was a bit more specific. That was purely students taking up courses.
I think the students are very open and I think very attracted to these issues, right? I mean, these are young people, most of whom are idealists, and hence they are very keen to know about issues pertaining to inequality and now about sustainability. I mean, I am not the only one teaching course on social enterprises. I mean, Professor Tilochan Shastri runs course on social enterprises, 1 section, 2 section. There is this gentleman, Professor S. Sriram, who runs a course on microfinance. There is 2 other economists who runs a course on developmental economics, and most of them are very well subscribed. So I think at a student level, there is tremendous response to these kind of courses. And the names I am taking, none of them are easy professors to deal with. I mean, it's not like a time pass course, right? That you go and sit in the class and you will get good marks. I mean, there are enough of those easy courses in other domains where students could have taken that. So I don't have any doubt in saying that.
Do you also see people then taking career paths in this direction, or is it more kind of just being aware of the topic?
No, and that is the problem. Yeah, that is a challenge, right? And that has become even more challenging today because of the amount of fees the program structure has, and most of them are carrying loans,
Hmm.
etc. So I keep on telling my students that that has been always my regret, that these 12 batches and multiplied by about 1.5, because sometimes I have two sections, sometimes I have one sections of these generations of students whom I have taught. It's only a handful of you who have actually become social entrepreneurs. But think about it in a little widely, right? One of the thing is that many of them actually turn to becoming social entrepreneurs around the middle age, around maybe 30, 35, right? Not immediately. And many of them come and tell us also that said, I have to make my loan, I mean, pay back my loan, I have to take care of my family, etc. But I really intend to come back and do something. That's one. Second thing, and this is our understanding, that today, if we have evangelists for with these kind of perspectives, it might be more effective to have them within for-profit companies, because there they can move the needle, because you have the power, you have the money. If you have the intention, then you can do a lot more difference than probably running a small social enterprise. I mean, imagine if you're working for a company like Tata, who have so much of capability, right? So much of resources. You can rightly direct those in certain activities much better than probably what you will be able to do if you are a standalone social enterprise. And I think the
And
Indian
awareness
regulatory
of those
environment.
concepts in normal decision making also kind of help, right? Because
It
once
does.
you have the
Absolutely.
cognizance of
Absolutely. Right.
that,
And the
you,
Indian
you can
regulatory
be.
environment on the CSR rules have also been very good, right? It is probably the only place in the world where they have mandated a CSR spending 2% of the profitability. So now naturally, many of these students are also applying that knowledge to decide where to put the fund, right? I mean, because well, you can put funds, but the effectiveness of your deployment of fund varies depending upon what kind of company, what kind of avenue you are putting in. And so I now I'm much more hopeful that courses like this will be able to make some difference to the perspective of students.
It's very impressive, Saurabh. I had no idea. I just did not have this perspective that sustainability and equality that you're teaching in your courses, how that is having effects over the long term, even though only one or two students are taking jobs in those fields right outside the
Yeah.
campus. But 2% corporate social responsibility, India-wide, that must be over 1,000 crores that corporates are setting aside.
24,000 crores or something. Yeah, that's big money.
24,000 crores each year.
Yes, that's what
Wow.
the estimate. Yeah,
Wow.
that's big
So
money.
24,000 crores is being set aside each year for
Yeah.
corporate social responsibility.
Yeah.
And one of the 2,000 students' lives that you have touched, these 2,000 students will influence where these 24,000 crores
Absolutely. I
each year
have
gets
students who
spent.
are working for Tata Trust. who are
2,000
using this
students
technology.
every year for 20 years.
No,
Sorry?
it's 2,000 students in total over the last 10 years, because it teaches one class of
One
around
section or
150.
two section. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's around, but that's a big cohort. That's a big cohort.
Yeah.
That's having a lifelong impact on India. Very impressive.
So just coming back
I'll ask you
one
the next question.
one
No,
point.
you go on. No, go on.
Next. So we talked about your running in the beginning. I remember seeing a LinkedIn post where some of the students also were thanking you for having initiated them into running and making running kind of popular on campus among the students. Can you talk a little about that? How you have been managing that? How many students typically run as a proportion on campus?
Very low, Chao. I think that's a single biggest failure so far for me. Because you see, I have realized a couple of things. I mean, I've been lucky to get introduced to this group called Runners High about now 12 years ago, where there is a coach who does a very structured training program, and most impressively, he cross subsidizes. So he collects money from us against coaching, and that's like not very high, and he uses that to do social work. So he is another social entrepreneur. I mean, he uses it to fund schools for the underprivileged. So I'm very inspired by what he does. But since I have been with this group, I also learned a lot of science that needs to go in terms of becoming an endurance runner, especially at our age, because earlier in the discussion you talked about how it hits your knees and how it how running is an impact sports and the injuries are very high and the chances of getting injured exponentially increases with your age, right? So you have to be careful about that. Careful in terms of your schedule, careful in terms of how you ramp up, careful in terms of what kind of shoes you are wearing. That's the most expensive thing as far as running is concerned, that you cannot, typically on an average, the shoes will cost you about 12 to 13,000 rupees a pair, and you cannot use these shoes beyond 1,000 kilometers of running. So at my mileages, I have to buy 2 pairs of shoes at least during a year, right? Now, all of these helps you to probably minimize chances of injury, but I am now reasonably well versed. I also started coaching in that group, and I have been coaching, mentoring a lot of runners, long distance runners, and have kind of learned from that way. Now, I realize that it is very difficult to tell people to do something as far as physical exercise is concerned. I mean, unless and until it comes deep from internally, it's very difficult. You will never listen to somebody advising you to say, go and run, right? You will have to feel it that way. So I thought that if I have to inspire my students to do it, then I have to be a role model myself. And they have to see me doing it, and maybe someday they will start emulating me. But the second part has hardly happened, right? I mean, they do see me running. They come and say, wow, I mean, we are so impressed. You are running every day, you are running 4 days a week, and so on and so forth. But the next step has not happened. I mean, it happens in very small numbers. And I keep on telling them that, look, I mean, campus is the place where actually you can pick up habits, right? I mean, because once you join a corporate, the pressures on you will be much, much higher. I mean, you will have work pressure, you are starting your careers. But if you develop the habit here, if you develop the discipline here, then that will continue. But just as Mix was saying, right, that we ourselves never listen to our parents, why would I expect my son to listen to me? I think we were also like this when we were 21, 22, right? I mean, some old prof coming and telling you some stuff about, be healthy in life. Who cares, man? So I think I'm kind of in that situation. But yeah, every year I will find a few enthusiasts. They will run with me and they will kind of say, okay, this is the way stuff. And I'm also in touch with many of my students who have continued with their habits, but numbers are very, very small. I hope it was for you.
But then, like you were saying, I also, when I was 21, picked up a lot of my habits from campus at L Square.
Yeah. But I feel this way. I don't have a very strong research basis to do that. That to some extent India is changing, right? An orientation about health, fitness, and all of this also comes with a development in the economic status of you, right? When you are struggling every day for food, clothing, shelter, nobody worries about being fit. But now that we have a reasonable layer who are economically much better off, you can see some of those signs. And I think that when children see their parents to be focused on health and fitness, etc., then someday in life they will also pick it up, right? Whereas we have grown up mostly seeing our parents not doing all that stuff, so it's pretty alien to us. I mean, even today it is pretty alien to see somebody running on the road and stuff. Hopefully that will change over the next 10-15 years, and India can become a little bit more fitness oriented. And at least, Mr. Modi talks a lot about that, right? I mean, everywhere he goes, he wants to introduce this whole fitness thing, Hello India. So I see those as very positive signs.
I want to share an interesting anecdote with our group here. Many times in San Francisco, people will ask me, where did you get educated? And I'll say, I got educated at IIM. And then I'll meet them a couple of weeks later. They'll introduce me to someone else. Oh, he's from IIT. So the topic I want to bring up is the difference between the IIT and IIM brand name globally outside India. Because...
A second. Outside India, does that mean Silicon Valley and all the techies, or does that mean generally outside India?
I've been surrounded in this tech culture for the last 20 years, so I can only talk about my experience. So, and in my experience, it's kind of frustrating because I tell people I'm from IIM and I get introduced and I get remembered in their mind as if I'm from IIT. And at one point, I stopped correcting them. How many times you correct someone? So I'm still known as the electrical engineer from IIT at some places. I'm like, no, I'm not from IIT. I'm not an electrical engineer. A couple of weeks later, oh, he's from IIT. I'm like, okay. is this only a Silicon Valley phenomenon mix, or do you see that in London also?
Well, I don't think it's an only Silicon Valley thing, but I'm sure it is like a 99% Silicon Valley thing, in the sense that in Silicon Valley, IITians go there and then they don't feel the need to do an MBA, right? Why would you?
Yes.
And it doesn't have to be IIT. I mean, even a Stanford engineer usually doesn't feel the need to do an MBA once they are into that circles, right?
Yes.
I think it's probably still there. It's probably partly because IITs have been either on for longer or having had a bigger alumni base and so on that was more exportable over the years. And the IIM exportable base is only in the last 20, 30 years.
Yes.
If you see that. So it's there, in my opinion, it's there across the world. And you're absolutely right that people know the IITs more than IIMs. But my only thing was, I suspect in the Silicon Valley, it's probably,
More pronounced.
why would anyone who's from the IIT go to an IIM if they were going there?
Yes, you're right.
Of course,
And
you'll
I
have free
think-
cases. You'll have free cases, so we'll not talk about and take names there. But yeah,
Yes, but I think the idea of exportable base is also very interesting, because when I talk to my friends from IITs, they tell me that more than 50% of the batch is not in India anymore. But when we talk about IIMs, I think around 10% of our batch is not in India anymore. So I think
is it
a larger percentage of
50% of batch is outside?
That's what I've heard from a couple of people I've asked anecdotally. We can get confirmation from Chow and Saurabh, who are both from IITs. Chow, what about, do you think that percentage stands, that for the streams in demand in IITs like computer science, electrical engineering, and so on, more than 50% of batch ends up being outside India?
So that is true in the initial years of the career, I would say. But there are, at least in our batch and in a few batches junior, I have observed there are a lot of people who have come back to India in various roles.
Okay.
So people who have continued to stay are got that high percentage. But yes, almost everyone has had a stint in various parts of the world.
And Chow, from your understanding, which kind of sectors or industries are these people coming back to India to?
So they are coming back both in the IT industry, in consulting, in private equity as well. So various things. Some people are coming back to their family businesses and then expanding them. So I know people who are IT computer science graduates who came back to kind of manage a pure manufacturing firm and then figured that no, this is not what I want to do, and then again get into something else. So yeah, every person has their own journey, but there are a lot of people who have returned back to various roles. Love to hear from Saurabh.
Vix, if I might ask you, what would it take for you to come back to India?
Oh,
If anything.
you reach
I
into
know
a
it's a
very
tough
personal
question.
spot.
You don't need to answer.
Let me see if I can pull it in. You will get a candy if you come in the camera. You'll get. That's okay. These are my friends. These are my friends. I'll buy these if you come into the camera. So what will take for me to come back to India is for her to turn 18 and leave for a college, because I don't think.
Got it.
She's gonna.
Got it. You don't need to say anything more.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I will buy it after the show. So I think my heart is still in India. I strongly feel very attached to the country. But what ends up happening is you get married, you have children, and then, like in my case, you get divorced. So your wife is not going to move with you. So if your wife is not going to move with you, your child cannot move with you. So it gets complicated.
And I think whether you get divorced or not, for most of us, it's still the same common story where once the kids are in school, they are used to a particular thing, and then you think, okay, let's not uproot them. And then
Yes.
it's like when they turn 18, then we'll take our own call. Now, some of us might go back, some of us might not still, for various reasons. But yeah, my story and a lot of other people like you that I know around me is the same. It's like, once the kids are in college, then we'll reevaluate.
Yeah, I think that there's a critical part to this. So when I relocated back from New Jersey, it was a time when my elder son was in fourth grade, and part of the decision was that if we want to move back, we need to move back now before they become older and it becomes tougher for them to make that adjustment. So that it was just a very conscious call to relocate at that time.
So the last time I took that call on coming back to India was in 2014. And I spent most of the year of 2014 looking for something suitable for myself in India. Mainly because 2015, late 2015, my son would start like proper school. He was in nursery, and my daughter was like just 1 or 2 years old then. And for me, it was that once they start going to school, I know it'll be increasingly difficult for me to even think about relocating. So, long story short, that didn't happen. And for me, now it is probably 5 years from now that I'll rethink. Of course, never say never. It might be sooner than that.
But
No,
Mix,
but
what
see,
is
this
the
is an
street? What
interesting
is this?
part here. Which that so when we relocated, basically we evaluated which schools to select and so on. And there were a few schools even so we relocated in 2014 as well. And there were a few schools already where it was known that okay, if you are a relocating parent, then you better select one of these schools because the population is of that mix. There is a large proportion of students who have been born abroad, stayed abroad, and then shifting back here. So that just tells me that yes, there is a sizable population of people who do come back.
Mix, what is the brand strength of IIM in London? Like when you meet people in your social circles, have they heard about the IIMs?
So, a lot of my social circles is IIM. So I'm obviously biased. They have, because they themselves have done IIM. But if I talk about non-IIM, okay, let me go out. If I talk about non-Indians, non-people who have grown up, born in India, I think it's limited, but they get it. If reminded, they get it. Right? On a similar scale to IIT.
Okay.
Maybe on a slightly lesser scale or a slightly higher scale, but they get it. Broadly in the same region.
So
But yeah, I've
next
got a
question.
very thin sample set of non-IIM people, partly because I'll be honest, I don't introduce myself as IIM to some of the white guys that I have around here, or the non-Indian guys that I have here, and not necessarily white. I introduce myself as LBS because I don't need to, right?
Makes sense.
So,
Makes sense.
cutting that out, I think it's all right, and that's where initially when I mentioned, I think my view is IIT and IIM is not that different from India out here. My other view out actually is, and this is including my own parents and extended family, is when I told them I'm going to do an MBA at LBS for the next 10 years, I had to explain to them that it is LBS and not LSE. because a lot of them, including my mom occasionally still, says, "Oh, तुमने तो LSE से MBA किया है ना?" And I have to explain, नहीं LSE नहीं मम्मी, LBS.
Yes.
So yeah, so that is still a bit of a gap.
So Saurabh, I want to move from the brand strength of IIM outside the country into the idea of the corpus that IIMs have. Very often I read and hear that Stanford has over $50 billion in corpus now. Harvard, Stanford, Yale, these are all 50 billion plus, or at least 40 billion plus corpus sizes. What I understand from the brief conversation that we had prior, that we don't have a large corpus. I think our corpus would be 100 crores, 200 crores, 1,000 crores, 1,000 crores corpus. So, what would it take for us to have a 100,000 crore corpus? Like, if we were to, one thing Silicon Valley has taught me is that sometimes you take a problem statement that you're facing and you take it to the extreme. Like, instead of trying to go from 1,000 crores to 2,000 crores, you say, okay, I want to go from 1,000 crores to 100,000 crores. Then it forces you to think out of the box. What will it take us to have a 100,000 crore corpus? Because I personally feel, with the work you do, with the batchmates I had, like guys like us, we will eat Stanford and Harvard MBAs and we'll chew and throw them out every afternoon, Like the amount of intellect we bring, the amount of hard work we bring, the amount of lateral thinking we bring, it's just phenomenal. And I think it comes down to the ratio, like from 3 lakh to 600, And the acceptance rate at Stanford and Harvard is still 2 or 3%. They are nowhere near our kind of acceptance rate. So what will it, and for us to be recognized in the world for our intellect, we need to have 100,000 crore corpus, because when you have that kind of money, then you do things at a different scale. What will it take for us to get there?
Yeah, Vikas, so a couple of things here. One is that, I don't think we have ever thought in those lines that we need to build a very heavy corpus, because, being a government organization, why do we even have 1,000 crore corpus? Is because significant part of it goes into paying for our retirement benefits, for our, there was this old pension scheme, then our health insurance. So technically, if you look at the unfettered funds out of that 1,000 crore is actually somewhere around 500 crores, right? So in fact, we were just having the board level discussion, and some of the board members said, don't even call it 1,000 crores. You should actually call it 500 crores, because you will have to pay for insurance, you will have to pay for healthcare of your employees, and none of this money comes from the government today. And in fact, a lot of questions are raised that why would you need to have that extra money? I mean, is it or shouldn't you use that money to fund or reduce your fees and fund the poor students rather than building a corpus, right?
That doesn't make sense. Yeah.
Right. So every time we kind of have this debate that, what is an optimum number? So I think nobody has thought that we should build a solid corpus, because as you rightly said, that when you have good amount of corpus, then your operating model can change substantially. I mean, today,
yes,
I am almost needed to do about maybe 200 hours of teaching in a year, and that's just teaching, and then there is enormous amount of evaluation load, simply because I have to earn revenue for the institute, whereas a Harvard professor doesn't need to do that, because he or she doesn't need to earn so much of revenue for the institute, and they can build Harvard's reputation by doing high quality research, right? So you are right in that sense. And I think it's a matter of intent, right? I mean, if you want to do that, and if you think that your stakeholders will allow you to do that, then you kind of go ahead and do it, right? So that's one part of the story. The second one, of course, is to say that these are older institutes, so they have been able to build up the corpus over a period of time, and so that's also a function. And just to give you a comparison, today our fundraising team in IIMB has only one person. And,
I can tell you this, that Stanford has probably over 100 people raising funds.
Absolutely, right? I mean,
they wine and dine their alumni. Yeah.
So, and these are people of high quality. I mean, they recruit their own MBAs to run their, alumni or development office. Whereas I can't
Yes.
do that. I mean, we have recruited
Okay.
somebody at a government scale, etc. So just these are not even comparable to that sense. Also, we have to be very clear that what do you give back in return
Yes.
if I'm going to an alumni and asking for money, or if I'm going to an industrialist and asking for a donation, what am I going to give back in return? And today we don't have
Yes.
much to give back except for naming
Yes.
rights. Whereas that US universities are able to give them some slots, some
Yes.
relaxation in the admission process,
Legacy admissions and so on.
legacy,
Yes.
etc. So there are all these multiple factors which we have to work if we want to go to that model. But my question is, will our key stakeholders even want to go to that model?
Makes sense. Makes sense. Now, you mentioned a couple of times two orthogonal ideas. One is that the government doesn't fund you anymore.
Yeah.
And second, that you're a government institute. So those are two orthogonal ideas, right? Like you're saying that, look, I have an owner, which is the public sector, which is the government. And then you're also saying, well, my owner is telling me that you have to survive in this private world and you have to accept 1,500 students, you have to create a worldwide brand for yourself. So how much control does the government have over IIMs if it doesn't fund you?
So if they want, they can take complete control. In fact, 2017, they passed a bill which gave us a lot of autonomy, and autonomy in the sense that we could select our own chairperson, we could select our own board, we could obviously select our own director. That has just been taken back. So,
oh my God, okay.
Right. So last.
What was the reasoning for taking it back?
They said that some IIMs have not been responsible enough to handle the freedom. Okay?
Oh my God. So you take it back for all the IIMs.
Yeah. So now it's the President of India, which means Ministry of HRD, who will appoint the chairperson, who will appoint the director, who can actually dismiss both the chairperson.
Even the director will now be appointed by HRD. That's not...
and who can also dismiss either the chairperson or the director if they find that something is wrong with that, right? So having said that, I mean, we haven't seen any explicit initiative or explicit action that they want to control us. They don't intervene in terms of how we create the curriculum, how we run our organization, that's all. But you must realize that all our pay scales are determined by the government. Our recruitment policies are determined by them. There are certain bureaucracies that we face, because even to identify a good supplier for any of the projects that we are doing, you have to go by government mandates of L1, and all the challenges, right? So yes, we are in this situation where, while we don't get any financial support from the government, we have to abide by a lot of government rules and regulations. But having said that, you think of the land for the new campus, it has actually come free of cost to us from the state government.
Sure.
So while we have not received financial support from the governments, I think after 1998 we haven't received anything. But certainly this land is from the state government. So yeah, I mean, we are like the grown-up kids who are financially self-sufficient, but who still belong to the family, right? So we have a father and a mother, and we have to listen to them.
And my perspective of an alumni who left the campus 23 years ago, I'm not sure if I'm representative of the wider perspective, but I strongly believe that we belong in the same cohort as Stanford and Harvard, and I believe that that is our place to claim. And the only reason we haven't claimed it is because, like you said, that the organization has not wanted to claim it, or if the organization has wanted to claim it, it has not put forward a strategy to claim that position which it deserves, and it belongs there. And I have actually placed a bet with Chow and Mix that you're the next director of IIM. So so we are interviewing a pre-director of IIM Bangalore, and or maybe one of the other IIMs, because we do see people moving out to other IIMs, like Professor Janat Saab went to IIM. I hope that that at some time in my lifetime, I see us trying to claim what is rightfully ours.
No, I think that is definitely aspirational. I don't think anybody was talking about this stuff 20 years ago, but I think the last 10 years we have been talking about it, that why not there? And it's not that, we can be exactly like a Stanford or a Harvard, but if you look at the parameters, etc., there are lot more that we can do. We are already doing a whole bunch of stuff. And I think what has also helped us is the importance of India as a country. So
Yes.
as India also becomes important in the geopolitical area, economically much better, so our ability to put ourselves in the right platform is also improving. So I think you are right that the stars are certainly well aligned. We have to
Yes.
aspire and we have to work hard to put ourselves there in terms of saying that yes, we are definitely also one of the leading business schools, and we kind of claim the position that is possible out there. I mean, you look at China. I mean, they have done that, right? I mean, you look at a university like HKUST. I mean, coming from Hong Kong. I mean, they are kind of considered within the top 10. So why is it that ABC are still around 30s and 40s? I mean, we should be
30s
able.
and 40s.
Yeah, we should be able
Yes.
to do within the top 10. Yeah.
Yes.
On a related note, so Corpus is one part of where the institutions stand, but just connecting back on how alumni can kind of support the institution non-financially, I would say. Wanted to hear your thoughts on what are the small or big things that we as alumni can do.
There is plenty of that scope. One is that I think not only IIMs but even IITs, we are not very good in industry academia collaboration, and our alumni can be a very strong connector between us and the industry. Because today the situation is that I would say the academia like us, we are probably a little bit away from the realities of the industry, right? And we would not like to engage with the current problems, but we look at it more from an academic perspective. And the industry is also looking at very focused on current problems, and they don't appreciate that what would typically the value that can an educational institute create. And so none of us are shaking hands with each other. I think that bridging mechanism can be done by alumni. So we are talking about, say, an alumni who runs a company, who comes to IIM and said, well, I am facing this problem. Can you get involved? Can we do joint research? Can we provide? I will provide you the data. You provide us the perspective. You provide the framework, and together we can, either bring out a paper, publish, or solve the problem, and so on and so forth. So I think that's definitely a big way in which alumni can be of help, and that I don't see that happening. We have to make it happen, pushing both ways. Likewise, when we are talking about developing joint academic content, offering joint courses today, happening in bits and pieces, but I think we can do it in a much structured manner, much better manner, because management is a very applied field, unlike maybe some aspect of engineering or sciences, right? This is where you need to study the phenomenon that is happening out there, and who best to do that apart from our alumni, and us faculty members can even combine with them. So the first part I talked about is solving industry problems, bringing about industry academia collaboration. The next part I'm talking about is developing academic content, educational content with industry academic collaboration. And the others are low-hanging fruits, right? Alumni should come and teach more often. They should be invited as guest speakers. They can act as solid mentors for our students. I mean, today there is this huge confusion in the mind of the student that, what do I do with my career? And I was telling today that to a couple of my students who are talking with me that, you guys are only following conventions. I mean, you people don't stand for your convictions. And I would look at my batch of 180 students, that is you guys, and I would see a lot more people standing for their conviction than conventions. Whereas I don't see that in today's batch, because there is too much of this group thing. There's too much of the influence of the senior batch, who in turn were influenced by their senior batch. And we should not be like this. I mean, we are one of the most privileged students in India, right? I mean, you guys sitting in IIM Bangalore.
Yes.
Right? I mean, the world is at your feet. So
Yes.
you do stuff which you think you want to do, and not really do stuff just because somebody else is doing that. right? But I think alumni can play a very important part, because the students typically believe that these profs they keep on telling the stuff, which is not relevant, because these people themselves are not in the industry. But if people like you come and tell them in the right manner, then they are likely to listen to you a lot better. So I think this whole range of activities where we can certainly up the engagement between the alumni and the institute. And really,
I think sort of that 3-point thing that I just heard is the best framework that I would have, I could have heard from anyone about the engagement, about alumni and everything. On the last part, I have to say this about your batch. Many of us, 20 or 23 years ago, probably were rated by you at a similar level than your current students, and that's not unfair because we were there, but some of us have matured over the years, and that's the big thing that many of the current students can also learn from, that what you do when you're 22, what you do when you're 25 is fine, as long as you keep growing from your experiences and move from one experience to another and so on, and learn from them. And that's the big thing. And then coming back to your, I think it was your second point, what can alumni contribute in the sense, so there were the 3 points. One was the mentorship, that was the third one. The second one was giving back to academia, the collaboration. Are you thinking about, so here is the thing that Harvard is the big leader in, which is Harvard case studies, HBS case studies.
Yeah.
Right. Even Stanford, even LBS, even everyone in the world does HBS case studies. Is there a sense in trying to do some IIMB case studies?
So, Mix, you I don't know how much you are following this, but today in IIMB we rarely teach HBS case studies, because we took a target about 10 years ago that at least 50% of our case studies in class has to be written by us. Today, it is actually much more than 50%. So my course is all cases, Indian cases, written by us, right? And what we have also done is now we have a tie-up with Harvard itself, that our case studies get published by them. So if you go to the Harvard Business Case Repository, you will find about 300 cases which are written by our colleagues and which are being taught all across the world, right? So we have made a lot of advancement there. And what we realized is that instead of just creating our own case repository, since Harvard has become the de facto standard, let us be there, right? And that is our best platform to even popularize our cases being taught all over the world. But we can do a lot more. I mean, certainly that. But today we have done quite a bit in the last 10 years, at least on the case study front.
I think that's wonderful. That's wonderful. And I'll tell you my experience, and being a metro boy from that time, growing up in Delhi all through my life before IIM Bangalore, is there were times, and the only one subject that I distinctly remember even today, where I was challenged to do a case study which I was absolutely at sea with, was Mithileshwar Jha, rural marketing. And there were some of my classmates, I won't name, but I remember every one of them, who were more outspoken, who were more talking in that class for the first time in my 1.5 years that I had seen them, because he was actually talking about grassroots. And to some extent, maybe some of them, and not necessarily all of them, were from what we were initially discussing about people who come from a different benchmark and get in because of their circumstances, whether it's caste or economics or whatever else. But that opened my eyes. And for me, because you can't teach rural marketing in India using HBS case studies, although I must say we still had 2 HBS case studies in the rural marketing class, but that was the least of everything that we did in IIMBAA at that time.
So Saurabh, let me ask you this: like, we have an investor guy in our group today, Mix, and I've had an opportunity to get to know him more over the last couple of months, and he's got fundamentally good insights on venture capital investing, private equity investing, and this guy, look at his career, right? Like 25 years, like a guy like him and his experience is very valuable to someone who is in our MBA program or the EPGP program today. What would it take for Megs to go and teach a class? Like, what would it like? I'm trying to bring it down to the nuts and bolts. Say if Megs wanted to offer a 3-month course, what will it take this investor guy to offer this 3-month course at IIM Bangalore? Because I can tell you this, that the insights that this investor guy has are just phenomenal.
Yeah, so I think it's just an intent and the ability, makes the ability to give that time. That's I think becomes often the biggest bottleneck, because you guys are working and still want to do this, and managing your time, especially if you're not even in the country. I mean, even if you're not in the same city itself, it becomes very difficult, because academic institutes also have a bit of a rhythm. I mean, I think we had a very similar profile, like Mix, investment banker sitting in Singapore, who said that I will come and do this course, and we were very open to that. But he said that, look, I can't come 2 days a week for 10 weeks, right? So I will come twice and 2 weeks, and I will stay there and deliver the course and go. We tried that model. It was a disaster, because students just could not pick up much. I mean, they're saying it is too intense, the person is brilliant, the content is fantastic, but we couldn't learn anything, because in 2 weeks he packed so much. And it was not that he was only teaching those courses only in 2 weeks, there were like 5 other courses going on, right? So I think those are some of the stuff which we need to work out, and it needs a bit of an understanding from both sides, that if you are doing this, then this much amount of time needs to be given. That's one part of it.
So suppose if we are able to convince Megs that, hey, can you take a 3-month, 10-week sabbatical, move to IIM Bangalore,
it'll work very well.
Will the university be receptive to hosting him for 10 weeks and giving him an MDC and letting him eat in our dining hall every day, the idlis and dosas? Oh my God, yeah.
So
is Jason still there? I've forgotten.
No, he has retired now. Yeah. So the batch which met for their alumni last week, they invited Gundurao, Desan and Nagraj, apart from the faculty members, and none of them were in Bangalore. So they came. Gundurao is now in IIM Amritsar. Desan is in his village in Tamil Nadu, and actually Nagraj is in Bangalore. So all of them came, and it was really fun meeting them.
But is the food still as good as it used to be? Are we still eating at the same dining hall? Because with 600 people, I don't know.
It has expanded. No, it has expanded. It has now 2 stories.
It's a bigger dining hall,
which we have opened.
Okay.
But to tell you, Vikas,
I have to say my biggest remembrance of IIMB dining hall, and this is like a vague remembrance, is because MTR from Bangalore opened like 1.5 miles from my place. So when I go there, and usually I go there alone because my kids don't want to eat that thick dosa.
The uttapam, don't call it the thick dosa, uttapam.
No, it's like benne dosa.
Yeah, it's
benne dosa. The benne dosa, the Bangalore, the whatever. I order a benne dosa, just think about IIMB, and that's my food remembrance of in London about IIMB. But yeah, no. So coming back. Vix, we've never discussed this before. I know you put me in a spot as an example, but as you were saying it, and Chaurabda was answering, people like us. I mean, there are loads of people like me, and I can say this on record right now. It's like, we can come there. Of course, I never thought putting up in the MDC, because that was always the aspirational thing, because we were in the blocks. But that would be an added advantage. But happy to come there, happy to teach. Of course, just the one thing is, I know it didn't work out with that one course with the banker, but a lot of professional courses that I've done at LBS, they work like that. It's like a 1 month like fast forward courses and those kind of things. And usually they work at the end of the term or at the start of the term, like start of the second year or end of the first year, where you're like fast track courses where you're doing the whole term, a 3 month term, in whatever 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And what that means is you're doing whatever 12 credits in yeah, a class a week
So
instead of
Yeah, but I will give you an
a class an
example
hour.
which also worked. And so today we have something called workshop courses, where just to accommodate some of these things, we have created these spaces in between terms. And there is one gap between, say, November and December, where we say 2 weeks. So you guys can do a lot of workshop courses. And last year, 5 uh, guys from one particular batch. This is the 93-95 batch, and they were all like this, right? They were all investment bankers, 2 from Singapore, 3 from Mumbai. They said, hey, we will run a course together. So 5 of them landed
wonderful.
up in IIMB. They stayed here for a week. They also worked with Professor Ravi Anshuman to just understand how to structure the course and what has been covered before, right? So that they can pitch in well. And so Professor Ravi Anshuman and 5 of them did a workshop course on investments. And so it worked very well because it was very well received. And so institute is quite flexible in that sense, that yes, there are some frameworks within which you have to operate, but beyond that, I think it will be wonderful to have these kind of institutes.
I think there's
So I
one
want
more
to.
format that I've seen work a lot, and I'm just thinking about my 2 years of LBS, is a professional doing. Typically, we used to have 12 classes. I don't know how that works in the credit system at IMB now, but 12 classes or 12 credits or something like that in a term.
12 classes for
And
one
where,
course in a term.
yeah, one course in a term is 12 credits.
Okay.
Yeah, something like that. Maybe it's like a credit per week or something like that. And the reason I remember that is 10, you have to attend 10 classes to get a pass mark, and you know me. So um, the point was that there were, out of those 12 credits, there were a lot of classes which had 3 to 6 credits which were done by the industry practitioner and the rest done by the professor. And the reason I loved those courses best compared to the extreme of professor or the extreme of industry practitioner was, in certain cases they were, like you were saying from that previous discussion, is they gelled so much, which is what was taught in theory in one class just came alive in a different class. Like almost like अभी मैं बॉलीवुड में जाने वाला हूँ थोड़ी देर में, but it was almost like script पढ़ के suddenly आप movie picturize कर रहे हो, that kind of thing.
Yeah, perfect.
Right.
Yeah, perfect.
So that is the balance which an ideal class, in my opinion, should have, whether it's MBA or whether it's Bollywood.
Yeah, I think this will become the opening to our episode.
Yeah, I had one interesting experience. So, sort of the long back, I had taken a guest lecture in one of the classes, and it was the course which Professor Premchandar was teaching on valuation back in, I think, 2002.
Yeah. So I think that model works very well. That you work with a faculty member, so the faculty member brings in the framework necessary, etc., and the practitioner brings in his or her viewpoint. It also takes away. See, in our teaching, the biggest load is actually evaluation, right? I mean, if you ask me to come and teach, I can do it without batting an eyelid. But moment you say you run a course, I said, oh my God, there are 75 students, 4 components of evaluation. That's going to be a killer, right? And for guys like you who are coming from industry, I mean, and that's like a nightmare. So to balance it out, what we have worked out is that, okay, let the faculty figure out the evaluation, and the heavy hitting as far as evaluation is concerned, let it be done by the faculty, and the alumni or the practitioner comes and does many of the teaching, etc., and then the work in tandem. So you need to have this rhythm of working with a faculty member, and in that case it works out really very well.
So, sort of for those alumni watching this episode who want to come and do a guest lecture or teach, who do they reach out to at IIM Bangalore?
See, for alumni, it is best to use us, the alumni office, as the first point of contact, and then we would like to put you in touch with the relevant faculty member. But I think the more natural way would be that if you have maintained a contact with a faculty member, or if you have somebody who was your favorite faculty on campus, then have a chat with him or her and see whether you can fit in, right? So if you had a beloved finance prof, then just as Chow was saying, Prem Chandra, right? So have a chat with him and say, okay, you know what, sir, you are doing this, maybe I can do this kind of courses. So these work a lot more in terms of human relationships rather than us formally saying that Vikas is interested in teaching an entrepreneurship course, so Madam so and so, would you have him as a guest teacher in class? Because then there can be plenty of excuses on both sides, genuine ones, saying, oh come on, I mean, I already have a well set up and kind of.
Yeah, no, I'll just walk through how I came into that discussion with Professor Premchandra. So he was so I was working with ICICI Venture at that time. We were both on the board of one of our portfolio company, and there was some discussion there, and there was something that got discussed in the board meeting, and then he was aware. He didn't know me otherwise personally, even though I had attended his class on campus, and he just told me that you should take my class on valuation. So I thought maybe I said something really stupid, and he's like, you should have taken that class. I told him that, no sir, I've done that course with you when I was on campus. So then he said that no, you should come and take a guest lecture. So, but yes, you are right. I mean, informal connects kind of bring that freedom to the faculty member to take that decision rather than bringing that trigger through the institute.
So I have my IIT batchmate who is also an IIMB alum, but he was a 93-95 batch, who has been a banker, and now he is working for Avishkar Foundation in impact investment. So in my inclusive business model course, I don't do impact investment, because I don't have too much of background on that. So I always invite him. So he comes from Bombay. He does a very, very good session on impact investment, and so that works very well. I also invite some social entrepreneurs, but Sunshine sessions are something that students really love, because he can talk about the practices as well as bring in the rigor, and being a hardcore finance guy himself, he can really talk the language.
That's very impressive, Saurabh. I think there is a lot of desire within the alumni to give back, but I don't think this knowledge is out there. That alumni, like what you've just shared with us in the last 20 minutes. I wanted to take this opportunity for you to expand on the idea of mentorship. These 600 students are graduating every year. Does each one of them have an industry mentor today? Or what percentage of these students have an industry mentor?
No, so mentorship has been again a program which I don't think we have figured out the right model. We have tried several things. We have tried faculty mentors and realized, since there are 600 of them and we are only 100 faculty, so we created cohorts, and we said that okay, some of us will act as a mentor for the cohort. But we realized that people who actually need the mentorship never comes out, never seeks the thing. And mentorship is something which you can't force down somebody, right? There has to be a need based also from some aspect.
Mentee has to be ready, and
mentee also has to be ready, he or she, and there's this barrier. And people who actually come for those sessions are ones who really don't need any mentorship. They want to have a good chat with the faculty and go back. So then we went to alumni and saying, okay, maybe they will be better off with the alumni. But again, the same challenge is there, that while the alumni is very keen, they have good interaction with the students, but the one who really needs to be pulled up and mentored are not the ones who actually show up in person. So it has not been very successful. So now we are trying something else, which is being driven a little bit by the data analysis, and saying that who are the ones who are whom we do not see in any of these activities, either sports or cultural or any club activities. And I guess they're the ones who are for some reason, not coming out. And so let us go and try and do something for them. But it's very much early stages in work in progress. And we need to do a lot better job of that.
So we
I mean,
talked about
if I heard that you tried, professor mentorship, that was 20-30% take up. You tried XYZ mentorship, that was again 20-30% take up. Alumni mentorship, some take up. Why not try all of them at the same time and have a 90% take up? And I know it doesn't always add up X plus Y
Hmm.
plus Z,
Hmm, hmm, hmm,
but
hmm. Yeah.
everyone
No, I
is
think we
different.
should.
Some people take better to professors, some
Yes.
people take better to alumni.
Yeah. See, I on the IIT front, I sign up every year to be the mentor. Okay. Again, the same problem. 1 or 2 fellows, 6 fellows will sign up, 2 fellows will turn up, and the 2 fellows who will turn up hardly needs any mentorship. I mean, they probably are interested in writing CAT, and they're asking me, what will help to crack the CAT? Can you offer me an internship in IIMB and stuff like that? So
So they are already driven. They are
Yeah.
already driven.
and it goes to a totally different trajectory up to your point. The other thing which also happens on campus and which may not have been so much there, is that there are these potential recruiters who want to influence the students and land up on campus as mentors. Okay, so now we are a little bit wary of them, right? They may be our own alum, but their purpose is not mentoring. Their purpose is to identify talent and say, okay, you join my company and don't join the other.
Fair enough.
Right? So there are all these conflicting situations also that happen. So unless we really very carefully apply our mind, it might just happen a little bit, go the other way around.
I want to share an experience. I was very lucky that in the fourth semester of IIM Bangalore, I was an exchange student at Copenhagen Business School. And when I landed at Copenhagen Business School, they created a group of 6 students, I remember. And they gave us a real consulting project with a Danish company. Where and somehow in the Danish culture, it was this somebody in the C-suite who used to interact with us. And they gave us a real problem that the company was working on. And we met once every 2 weeks for a period of 3 months. And that experience has been so fundamental to me even today. What I saw as 6 of us going and meeting this C-suite guy, and they were a competitor to AutoCAD, the BIM, Building Information Management Software. And they gave us the problem that how do we create an international brand and how do we expand out of Denmark. And that learning was very phenomenal. So how many of such projects are happening in IIM Bangalore today? How many students get, well, we do have a summer internship where we go out and work. So 2 questions. What percentage of a batch is actually going abroad? I think that was an eye-opener for me. And the second question, what percentage of batch is actually doing class projects with industry collaboration?
So there are about 150 students which went on exchange program this year. So that is about 25%.
That's the size of our batch.
That was the size of our batch, but now the batch is bigger. So so going on exchange program has remained a popular choice on campus. I don't think all of them go to reasonably rigorous schools. So a significant part of it is also what we call an academic tourism part. But it's management education, right? I mean,
academic tourism also.
Yeah, you learn from every part. I mean, so that is the part. To your question about internships, see, there are now different categories. One is that the summer internship with consulting companies are very rigorous because the consulting companies are now using the summer internship to identify their potential employees. In fact, more students are joining as PPOs than again coming and sitting for placement. But a lot of other internships which are not that great, right? So students come back and say, I mean, okay, it was fine. I mean, I got exposed to companies. I understood how this stuff worked, but the work itself was not something very, very strong or very rigorous. in the course itself, if you remember, we have some of these things like, instead of taking a 3-credit course, you can actually do a project with a professor.
Yes.
So
Yes.
some of our centers now, for example, the supply chain center, every year in collaboration with companies floats projects, and students are invited to kind of solve those projects under the guidance of a professor. So those scope has increased. And then there is also a consulting club on campus. There's a marketing club on campus. Sometimes they get projects from the industries. Sometimes we might get a project which we think either I don't have time or which might be very suitable for a group of students to work on. So we pass it on to the consulting club. So there is scope, but I don't know how many of them can say that it was of as enriching an experience as what you had in that particular situation.
So we as a startup had interacted with another institute in Bangalore, I think Jackson Institute, and basically we did a project like this with them, kind of crafting a market strategy for the particular segment, defining the value proposition and so on. And I think that model works quite well because you have a faculty guide also. You have a team of 4-5. So we had about 5 students working with us alongside the faculty guide, and it was a fairly productive exercise, I would say, for us.
Nice. So, yeah, we also realize that having a faculty guide in the mix always helps, because otherwise sometimes it goes a little bit beyond control, and sometimes the company executives also do not have time to have a little bit of control over the students. So they give the problem and probably they will have a bit of an inconsistent engagement, but the faculty guide keep on pushing them.
So I think it's about that balance, that mix about industry versus faculty and academics. Whether it's about training that we were talking about, case studies, developing the teaching of a whole course which has a professor and an industry person, or an internship which has someone from academics overseeing very tiny bit maybe, and industry. But it's always, if I were to generalize this, it's about the balance then.
And so that,
both work together.
Does the alumni office offer support for alumni wanting to enter back in the industry after a break? Or say somebody 10 years into their career wants to change their job, can they come back to the alumni office and register themselves for other companies who are now looking for people with experience?
I think my connection was a bit weak in between, no?
Yeah, it was a bit weak in between.
Your screens.
So
what was the question, because you had about alumni office?
The question was, say somebody graduates from the batch and then 10 years down the line, they want to change their career. Can they come back and register themselves with the alumni office? And then can companies reach out to the alumni office and hire people who already have, is there placement support after graduation?
See, there is no formal placement support by the institute. But what we are doing is we are shifting it entirely to the alumni association. So the alumni app today enables you to do both way communication. So you can say that, okay, I am looking for this kind of opportunity, or what happens most frequently there is job postings. So whenever you have some jobs to offer, you are looking for some profile and all, you go and post there, and anybody from the alumni who has access to the app is able to see that and apply. We can do it a bit informally. I mean, there is no formal bandwidth for us to do it, but informally we can.
Oh, I didn't know that the alumni app actually had a feature where you can post jobs and people can apply for jobs. Is that an often used feature? Is that feature getting used?
I mean, it's becoming popular. I mean, we are trying to make the IIMBAA app as popular as possible, but if you have not downloaded it, please do that. And just see, because this is managed entirely by the alumni association, right? So we are a facilitator. We verify the credentials of the members who pick up the app, but after that it is an association thing how they want to run.
And
so I'll tell you about the IIMBAA app. Vix, I'll tell you about the IIMBAA app. I've used it. I've been using it for the last couple of months. It is an app. It is a very good app. but at the same time, it is one more app in the 15,000 apps that everyone has on their phones, right? So if you get that perspective, and the reason I say that is, as good an app as the IIMBAA app can be, I think the main thing is about IIMBAA or the IIMB Alumni Association, that we can popularize it, that we can let people be firstly aware of it, secondly be wanting to use it a bit more, and thirdly be contributing to it. So firstly being the taking from it, and thirdly just giving back to it, or posting jobs, whether it's posting jobs and so on. So a lot of times, in the best of efforts, things get stuck at number 2. You can get people to use it, you can get people to look for jobs there, but are people posting their jobs there? That is where the biggest, and that's about social networking. It's about social networking in the best of Facebook and LinkedIn terms, right? Are there enough contributors as there are sources from that?
So
And the
Saurabh, the
reason I
one thing,
say that, yeah,
yeah,
no, go on.
no, mix, go on, please. I'm sorry, I was,
Yeah. No,
yeah.
and the reason I say that is the reason I've been using this app in the last 1 or 2 months more often is because we've been trying to set up this IIMBAA in the UK, and which we have now. Last month, we've set up the IIMBAA UK chapter, and we are now building the chapter. Getting people to be part of the chapter, which we already had some of them, but we're getting loads of more people because we are now officially IIMBAA. We are officially IIMB Alumni Association. So loads of more people already and in future will get interested in it. And they'll be interested in it not just because what we have done in the last 10-15 years that I've been in the UK as informally as we never called ourselves IIMBAA, but we've been like, okay, we are IIM Alumni. We've said, okay, let's meet up for drinks. Right, that's the best way to meet up in the UK, pub drinks. And we've done that. We've networked. And then people exchange thoughts and whatever else. But now we are starting to do it in a more structured way, and it's just a start. And all I'm saying is, we only started this last month, but as IIMBAA and as using the app, it's a small step. I think the IIMBAA app is good. I think the IIMBAA app, I can't complain about the app, but I think the usage of the app, driven by the various alumni chapters, will ensure whether the app itself is successful or not.
So, Saurabh, based on our discussion today, the theme that seems to be emerging is that say if alumni had 1 crore to give back to their institute, he or she should actually give the money to IIMB Alumni Association, and the IIMB Alumni Association can be outside the main IIM Bangalore framework, not constrained by the chairman, the board of directors, which have their own.
Next, 1 crore you can give to me, and I will make sure that it is effectively used.
Yeah, but think about it, that if IIMB Alumni Association became the spearhead, which is not constrained by the government rules and regulations, it can then go and say, our target is to
I'm
raise
thinking
1,000
about it.
crores.
Even your daughter is saying कि क्या बोल रहा है? Your daughter is saying क्या बोल रहा है? चुप हो जा.
यार मेरे कुत्ते का नाम कृष्णा है, वो कृष्णा को कह रही थी चुप हो जा. तो but I think I have had some experience giving to IIM Bangalore, and that wasn't a positive experience, but I think that was also 12-14 years ago, so I don't hold anything against, because we were still developing, and I learned my own how to give better and so on. But I think if I was able to present a case that, look, we'll give this amount of money to IIMBAA, And IIMBAA will be tasked or will have the charter of raising funds, because IIMBAA can do so much more than what IIM can do because of the government framework. And I think it's possible to go 1:100. So for every 1 crore that an alumni gives to IIMBAA, the IIMBAA can have the charter to raise 100 crores. And because of the CSR rules, if there's 24,000 crores to give in India, IIM Bangalore getting 1% of that annually, 240 crores, is a very, very achievable target. That's a very achievable target with the right. But then you have to have an MBA. You have to pay him 25 lakhs a year. You have to give him, I think, some of the American institutes, they give a percentage of money raised to the MBA raising the money. It's like literally he's incentivized to raise money. So, and I see that in the political establishment in the US, where they have political action committees, which are not directly controlled by the candidate running for election. The political action committee is a voluntary organization that can raise as much money as you want. I have given chunks to the political action committee, but I'm restricted to give only $5,000 to say Vivek Ramaswamy's candidature for president, but I can give a much larger sum to the political action committee. So I think the theme that seems to be emerging is to have this distinction between IIM Bangalore and a voluntary organization which is supporting IIM Bangalore.
Yeah, no, you are right. You are right. We are working towards it. There are certain things which we have to be careful about, because in India, not all organizations can take fund and give the tax breaks, right? So because you know that the money that you are giving is also 100% tax exempt, but for that the organization needs to have certain qualifications. So I don't think IIMBAA in its existing form can do that, but the current thinking is that maybe IIM Bangalore itself can float a Section 8 company, which can operate as the fundraising company, but because it is not IIM Bangalore, it will not be governed by some of the traditional, government constraints, which is contingent upon us as an institute. So we are thinking in those lines, and already some of the IITs and I think IIM Ahmedabad has a Section 8 company which exactly does that.
Can you tell us a little bit more about what is a Section 8 company?
As a VC.
Section 8 is a not-for-profit company, because
Okay, got it.
That's the Companies Act, Section 8. I mean, it was actually Section 22, I think, which became Section 8 now. But we are working on that. I mean, it will probably be up and running in the next couple of months, which will also, as you rightly said, give us a lot of freedom to recruit people and pay them the market-linked salary, which we can't.
Yes. Not only pay them the market rate, but also give them 1% of whatever funds they collect.
Yeah, that variable pay, whatever in incentive system which is suitable. Yeah. In fact, the person who is the head of fundraising in IIT Madras is our alumni. He is Kaviraj Nair, a couple of years junior to us. And he is, I mean, his salary and everything is pretty much market rates, and he's doing pretty good. But we can't afford him at the current stage.
Okay, and he is doing it in a Section 8 company framework?
Yes. So IIT Madras has some 7 or 8 Section 8 companies for different purposes. One of them is for fundraising.
Okay, so that means we have a precedence on how it's been done. Yeah. So it would be a good idea to just follow that precedent.
Yes, we are on that. I mean, we should be able to tell you that within a few.
So I was just about to say before, and I don't know too much about Section 8 or so on. I kind of know, but not enough. What one of the lawyers I work with very frequently on deal structuring told me is, and I'm translating in Hindi because that's how I heard him saying it. तुम डील बनाओ, स्ट्रक्चर हम निकाल लेंगे.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. So Vikas, when do we close this?
I think
we can close it now, or we can close it in 5 minutes or 25 minutes.
5 minutes would be good for me. I have a class tomorrow morning. I need to squeeze in maybe an hour of running.
Yeah, it's nearly midnight. Sorry, I'm like
Yes.
yeah. Some of us are like ahead of time. Sorry, behind time.
So
12
Sourav,
बज गए
let's
हैं.
use
I don't know.
चाव की तो शक्ल से लग रहा है 12 बजे में है.
Do you work?
Actually, again,
Do you work on Saturday, Chow?
yeah. So we are 24/7. As a startup founder, you are always working.
Okay, you are always on.
Sourav, thank you for your time. I think you've been very graceful, and the conversation with you is so interesting. Like, we didn't expect the conversation
Wonderful
to
chatting to you guys.
go on for 2 hours. But for the last 5 minutes
Yes.
that we have you, where do you see, like, what is the future that you see? Where do you see a decade from now? So say, hopefully we get to do another podcast from you, say a decade from now. What would be some predictions that you would make? Say a couple of predictions. Give us your insights on education, on economy, on India, on IIM Bangalore, on Alumni office, anything. Something that, you strongly believe in that will happen over the next 10 years.
And you have only
If you
5
remember
minutes.
if you remember what Shamal Rai had said, right, that whenever somebody asks you to make prediction on a time scale where you won't be alive, so that you are
I
never
don't
wrong,
remember him saying
right?
that, but I really loved. I loved Professor Shamal Rai. He taught me a lot.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and a tough one. See, that the one which I always grapple with is technology, because I have no clue how it's going to evolve. I mean, the way it is moving now, with all the things that I hear about AI, which I hardly understand, I mean, a lot of us might just become redundant, or the way education is done. I mean, knowledge is disseminated. All of these things can radically change. I mean, the stuff that we hear about. I know that when I talk to some of the technologists, they say, "Hey, come on! I mean, we are still reasonably away from having total control over this technology and what is going to happen and stuff like that." But that really makes prediction so difficult. But I am also impressed or wondering that what are the things which are not going to change, right? I mean, 20 years ago, what were some of the stuff which still stays the same? A lot of things have changed, right? But there are also a lot of stuff which probably stays the same, and that's one advantage of being somebody in the organization behavior area, because human behavior is something that doesn't change, right? So,
Well said. Yeah.
So we still hopefully will have enough value for hard work. Hopefully we will be able to see through the clutter that is happening today in terms of fake news and what is authentic and what is not, and we should be able to resolve that. I think today we are still struggling with it, and I hope that in the geopolitical scenario there is more peace than what we are seeing today. I mean, it has been a real shock. Who would have believed 5 years ago that we will have 2 wars, full-time wars going on, right? And we just become bystanders to it, given the thing. And I'm sure that some way or the other businesses will get impacted by it. And the third thing, and these are all hopes, right? I mean, I'm not making any prediction here, is that we should, I hope we are able to crack the sustainability piece. Right? We are doing a pretty bad job of it till now. And my sense is that it's so scientifically complex, and from a human behavior perspective, we are not at all geared to deal with the sustainability problem, right? We are kind of, if you think of it, human progress, and I'm obviously oversimplifying it, is simply based on greed and convenience. And both greed and convenience create huge sustainability issues, right?
Yes.
And so very, very opposite to sustainability.
Absolutely right. And hence, will we be changing our behavior? Very unlikely. I mean, we are so incentivized to seek what is convenient, etc. And greed is so fundamental to our existence. And I'm not taking greed in a bad way, but I'm saying, given the incentives. So we will probably need serious scientific breakthrough to deal with these challenges of global warming and on, and whether it will be coming from geoengineering or something else, I have no idea. But I hope that we are able to crack the case much better.
Yeah, well said.
So yeah,
Thank
lot
you.
of hopes.
I think we can have a whole episode on sustainability with Saurabh at some point. I mean, the only thing I'll say on your greed and sustenance, because I've been in this thing and what I come across every day, it's at some point about 100 years ago, horse manure was the biggest pollution problem in London.
Yeah.
And fossil fuels, which is combustion engines, were the biggest solution to that horse manure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Today it is EV, and the only thing is anything in excess is bad. That is what my Dadima taught me. Anything in excess, and if you go with that philosophy, then sustainability can be solved. That is my personal mantra.
You're right,
about
absolutely.
sustainability, and maybe we can have a whole episode about sustainability. But I'm so glad that you summarize sort of the three things that you see going forward, as Vix asked you. That is lovely. That is I don't know, Vix and Chow, do you have any final words about any of those three?
No,
I think
like how sustainability is against greed and easiness. Like to see sustainability in that framework and how we have to go against our basic human nature to be sustainable. I've never looked at it in that framework. So thank you, Saurabh. I think that was wonderful. Just transferring that framework to me.
I think
sorry, Chow, go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was just saying that we are past the 5 minutes which we committed to Saurabh.
I think we can go on the whole night because it's fantastic. But here is a piece, which I realized later on. I teach in class about Henry Ford quite a bit because he brought in so many changes in the factory shop floor, and he kind of gave us a blueprint of large scale manufacturing. And then I read this piece where they said that when Henry Ford was doing his innovation and bringing the Ford Model T, at that point of time, 30% of US market had electric vehicles. And the reason electric vehicles got wiped out for the next 25 years is because Henry Ford was so superbly successful, right? So that's building on what Mix was talking about, that, Henry Ford was such a successful person, but fortunately or unfortunately, it was with internal combustion engine. And he was so super successful that by 1930s, the EV companies were driven out of market. It's only when in 70s, when there was an oil crisis, that once again EV made a comeback. But once again, the IC engines became so productive that EV disappeared in early 2000, right? And now again, they are making a comeback. So it's amazing if you look at some of the business history and see that how something which we thought was such a breakthrough is coming and hitting us at 50, 60 or 100 years later.
Yeah, and thank you, Saurabh. There's things that আমি আজকে জানলাম আমাদের ক্যাম্পাসকে নিয়ে, যেটা I had no idea. Though I think each year I spent a couple of hours on IIM Bangalore's website, but the things that I heard from you, I had no idea. So and thank you for your service. I think what you're doing is truly a service to the But I do want to acknowledge that you probably are working at 30% of your compensation, industry compensation, and you're living a very simple life. And it's truly a testament to your internal desire to give back.
So no, I must tell you that it's most difficult when you enter as an academician, right? That's where we have to correct ourselves a lot more, because as you grow senior, as you become an integral part of the institute, there are a lot more opportunities that come your way, and so you are not really by any stretch of imagination living an economically hard life. I mean, you are pretty well off. Now, if I start comparing with some of my classmates, I mean, Sundar Pichai was my classmate, so it depends on which one do you think as a standard, right? But India, unfortunately, is still at a situation with government scales that when you're an assistant professor joining the industry, your salary is really, really good. And that's where we keep on struggling. So, yeah, I mean, we have a little bit to do on that front. We are trying as an institute to kind of provide them with a lot more support, sometimes even financially, to ensure that it is something much better. But few months ago, or no, a couple of years ago, we benchmarked, and I think the joining salary of an assistant professor in IIM Bangalore was probably 25% or 30% of that of faculty joining ISB.
Wow.
And sitting in India, and they were able to do that simply because they were a private institute, whereas we were not able to do that because we are part of the government. So, yeah.
Yes.
But otherwise, fantastic, guys. Great initiative.
Thank you.
Nice
Thank you so
talking
much.
to you.